morning, everyone. Welcome to another Coffee and Contemplation brought to you by Spotlight Recovery. I'm your host, Lucas. It is March the 22nd today, and we've got a reflection on forgiveness. I know that's a tricky one for us. That's a tough one for us addicts. But it's a really important piece for recovery. It's something we absolutely have to work through for ourselves and for others just to really be able to find that true level of freedom that we can in recovery. So we're going to get into it a bit today. Okay, so this is from Answers in the Heart, which is a daily reflections book for people struggling with sex addiction, but you definitely don't need to identify with a sex addict to identify with some of the topics that they cover in this reflection. So let's get into it. March 22nd, Forgiveness is the Key to Action and Freedom by Hannah Arendt. Part of our recovery is the difficult quest for forgiveness. Our addiction causes us to do harmful things to ourselves and others. We were angry and rude and perhaps treacherous and hateful. How can we find forgiveness? Can we ever find forgiveness for all our wrongs? Let's go slowly and start by looking at ourselves. We have been hard on ourselves and without mercy for our failings, but many of them come from the illness of our sex addiction. We were a battleground for self-hatred. We split ourselves into two persons, the one who acts out and the one who condemns. Forgiveness brings those two wearing selves back together again. Now we are ready to make a list of those who have been harmed by us in our addiction. They will not always forget, nor will we, but we can reach out to them in love and humility. With these burdens of harm and hate removed, we are ready to move out into the active world of freedom. I want to forgive myself for hurting myself and those I love. So, yeah, there's just some hard truths in this one, some harsh realities. This is a bit of a heavy one for this morning. It's a strong and it's a powerful topic. Forgiveness was one of the hardest things for me in my recovery. It's still something, I don't think we could ever be good enough at forgiveness. I don't think we could ever stop working on that. But it definitely was a really big challenge for me. It was definitely a big struggle, just from some people in my life and past experiences and a lot of trauma and abuse that I have received from them. They were some of the hardest people to forgive. They were the hardest things for me to forgive and to overcome, to let go of and to move on from. And I'm sure we all have people that we are unwilling to forgive or unable. I'm sure you're thinking of them right now while I'm making this video, just about those specific people that you're like, no, I'm never going to forgive them or something, or you've heard the line of forgive but never forget. And it's like, okay, so then are you forgiving entirely? It sounds like you're still hanging on to something there. It's, I don't know, that could be kind of a debate in itself. Forgive or forget, forgive but never forget, and all of that stuff. So anyway, this is one of the biggest challenges that I've had in my recovery is total forgiveness, and something I need to keep working on and working at. Forgiveness of others, and then forgiveness of myself. And I think those are two kind of main categories that we can put these things into. The forgiveness of others is very straightforward, from what I was just sharing before. And then forgiveness of ourselves is another massive piece of this. And I don't think it's talked about enough in addiction recovery. People always talk about the shame and the guilt, the burdens of the past and all those things that we did and what we became, how we treated people. People talk about shame and guilt all the time, but they don't talk about forgiveness for yourself nearly enough. You have these terrible feelings and they're unfortunately justified based on how we lived. So, okay, we have them. There's a common thing. Great. What do you do with that? What do you do with this? You don't just sit and live with it. We also clearly couldn't. We can't. If we could live with this shit, we wouldn't need recovery or we wouldn't act out like crazy fucking addicts. So no, that's not an option. So forgiveness of self for these wrongdoings and for the past is so vital, and it's so important. And, ultimately, I'm kind of skipping through a bunch of the points here in the reflection, but ultimately, forgiveness is what can give us the most freedom in our recovery, the most freedom from addiction. Forgiveness of others, forgiveness of self. Yes, there's a bunch of other reasons why you do it, and I'm not taking away from any of those. But I think a big bottom line piece in it here is just for us to be able to have that freedom. I mean, that's what I want out of recovery. That's one of the main reasons as to why I do this. I felt the complete opposite of that in addiction and wasn't behaving like the person I wanted to be. So not only in recovery do I get a chance to learn how and become and act like the person that I want to be, I'm also able to find this complete freedom of my former life and of my former self, and forgiving myself for all those past things that I did, and forgiving others for all the past things that they did to me, quote or not, is what just gives me the most amount of freedom. And, and another part of why that's so important is, the difference between me having that freedom or the people that I'm forgiving or working on that forgiveness with. Well, if they're not addicts, then they're not going to kill themselves in their addiction as a result. Normal people, non-addicts, are somehow able to live with this stuff more. Well, or also maybe not. Maybe they just act out differently. All the things and people you see on the news, maybe they just act out differently than we do. But addicts can't, because we know and have a direct line as to how we behave and what we do and where that all leads. So forgiveness, how hard this is, how scary this is, and it's a lot of work. It's not... I was about to go on a tangent there. How much it is. It's one of the keys to freedom for us in recovery. So I can't emphasize enough of how important it is and how worth it is to do this work. So the tangent was the fact that it is work. It's not just, from my experience, especially for these big, hard ones you can't let go of, things you've really been hanging on to for a long time or very powerfully, you can't just choose to do it. And it's not just so easy and straightforward. And I hate when people hate's a strong word. I really don't like when people talk about it like it's that simple. Oh, why can't you just forgive me? Why can't you just forgive yourself? It's the same bullshit when somebody's like, oh, just let it go. Oh, you can just let it go. Hello? Do you not think that would be an option I would just willingly choose immediately to be free of all of this shit? Come on. Oh, I really think we need to stop talking like this to each other. It's so harmful. It's harmful and it's degrading. And it's I'm already feeling shameful and guilty about behavior that I have that I don't like or I'm trying to change. And now you're just going to pile on to this because you're saying I'm not able to just forgive instantly and let it go at the drop of a hat. People don't work like that. We just don't. Has not been my experience. Okay? So, this forgiveness piece, it's a lot of work. It's constant work. In this reflection, they talk about the work, and this is specifically through his 12-step approach in the third paragraph here. Now we are ready to make a list of those who had been harmed by us in our addiction. So they're talking about step 8, making the list, going to then step 9 of making amends to those people who are on this list. Another piece of this, too, that I don't think is talked about enough is a person to include on that list is yourself. Back to the forgiveness of self piece, making amends to yourself, loving yourself. That's an important piece of this too. There's all this outward work and also this internal work as well. So I really like that they mention and talk about that. Doing the steps has been one one of the things, it was a crucial piece for me to be able to learn and develop the skill of forgiveness and work through these things. I couldn't have done it without extensive therapy as well, especially because mine and the ones I was talking about, the biggest ones were really trauma-based, so I needed a really good, experienced trauma therapist that I connected with to be able to be working through those things, work through this therapeutic side of forgiveness, because 12-step is not therapy and sponsors are not therapists. So that's an important piece of it as well. And then having group therapy, still going to meetings, just other spaces and like friends in recovery, places where I can be talking about these things. I got to work through it. It's a process. It's like a muscle. I got to exercise it. I just had to keep working through and talking it out. And there's still some to this day that I can keep working on. I still am, and not to say that that's like something to like for you to be fearful and be like, oh my God, this guy's 12 years sober and he still hasn't forgiven some shit. Like it, still addict, still human, still working through this stuff. And it's not debilitating over my life today compared to where it was before. Yes, it can take some time and energy, and I'm going to therapy to work over this stuff. That's the point, is that I am working through this stuff, and I still am. I think that's just kind of like a part of being human, and with these areas that we always want to work on and work towards and get better at. So don't let it be a deterrent. I would love, and I think a lot of us would, if all these things could just magically disappear and go away. Again, not been my experience, and I've been at this a while. So something to just keep working at. Why? Well, as I've been talking this whole time, for that freedom of self. And these are on top of the obvious ones of it's the right thing to do. I don't want to hold a grudge. I don't want to be harboring resentment and hate towards others or towards myself and having these negative feelings. To me, that's all more of the obvious stuff. It's the end root freedom that comes from all of this is that biggest payoff, if you will, and benefit, which is kind of why I'm focusing on that. So, anything else just to mention here? I kind of went off on a bit of a tangent on it. I guess I'd just say is that I like how in this reflection they talk about these different versions of ourselves. It's like, think of like the Jekyll and Hyde situation. For me, I definitely had a lot more than two versions of myself. Personality disorders definitely bring out a whole lot of characters. Just these different versions of us that were causing harm in our addiction, or also still could be in recovery depending on where we're at that day. So then it's needing to do that work and looking on those other parts and aspects of ourselves too, and it kind of shows on, again, how complicated this can be, which is therefore why all this work comes in. It's not just so simple and cut and dry, right? And then can we ever find forgiveness? And I like that they're asking these real questions about it and looking through this. I mean, at the end of the day, I think, and this may sound contradictory, I'm not trying for it to be, forgiveness can be a choice if we are working at it and doing this work and being willing to let go of and being willing to forgive. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I believe that's something that's within our power to do if we are willing to and working at it actively. It's not just, like I was saying before, to sit and make the right choice. I don't think so. But willing to do this work and actively going through it, that's where this option comes in. And so, can we ever find forgiveness? Well, I think it's up to you. Yeah, I think we're going to finish at that. I'm going to wrap up on that for today. So, there we go. Forgiveness. It's a hard one. It's a lot of work. It's and brings up all these feelings. I'm definitely feeling I'm just talking to you about this. But again, really important piece for us in recovery, and it can give us so much freedom. The work is worth it. The work is worth it. I'm still doing some, like I'd said. And of course, life happens. New things will come up. So this becomes a skill that we learn and develop. But if it wasn't worth it and I wasn't getting a better and more peaceful life out of this, I wouldn't be still doing it, and I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you about it. So I hope that's enough proof behind everything that I'm saying. Okay, so please, down in the comments, what stands out for you in this reflection? What are some of your challenges around forgiveness? What's some of the biggest freedom you've ever experienced by working through forgiveness for yourself or others? Please, we'd love to read and see them. Love to get that input, and it can help somebody else. So please put them down there. Doing the rest of the YouTube things really helps the channel. Like, share, subscribe if you're enjoying this content. And check out the description. We've got some other free resources in there on how Spotlight Recovery can help you. Recovery coaching videos and exercises, a podcast, blog. Everything's all on the website. And the last service is that I do private recovery coaching with folks. So if you're resonating with this and what I'm talking about, but forgiveness is a really big challenge for you in recovery, I totally get it. I've been there. I'm still doing the work. Contacts in the description. Please reach out. Would love to hear from you and see if there's a way that I can help you work through some forgiveness to really aid in your recovery. Okay, and the last you can do to support the channel, if you want to get yourself some branded merch, donate, become a member of the channel. All these things will really help us grow so we can keep carrying the message. Okay, so thanks for joining us today. I hope you have a beautiful 24 in recovery, are able to work on some forgiveness to give yourself some more freedom today, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Okay, bye for now.